Hi, welcome back to my channel where I talk all about mental health. A big thank you to everybody who watched last week's video where I talked about, I documented a week living with OCD. Thank you to everybody who watched it and liked it and shared it. It was much appreciated. And if you would like to keep watching mental health videos, please subscribe to my channel so that you can stay in the loop when I next upload. So today I literally have no idea what I'm doing because I had a video idea planned and I've been trying to get it started, and I get a couple of minutes in and I freeze up because there is so much to what I wanted to do that I'm just not sure where to go with it. So I thought I'd leave that for a while and just do a mental health update today, because I've recently, last week, had a session of CBT for my health anxiety and my OCD, which, as I've mentioned in my two previous videos, and I've written about it on Twitter, and a lot of people were interested in finding out a little bit about that. So yeah, I thought today I'd just do a brief update because all my other videos have been quite long, so I thought maybe I'd do something a bit shorter today. So yeah, we'll see how it goes. As I have mentioned in previous videos, I have OCD, bipolar disorder, health anxiety and borderline personality disorder. I am under a psychiatrist for the bipolar disorder, a psychologist for the BPD, and now I am under a therapist, a CBT therapist for the OCD and health anxiety, because health anxiety actually falls into the OCD spectrum. So I've had a couple of sessions with CBT. I had my first one actually on TV. I was on a program called Dr. Google on ITV Tonight, and I was given a session of CBT on the program and it went really well. It was really emotional, but afterwards the therapist invited me for coffee and said she'd like to keep working with me, which is great because anybody who is currently waiting for CBT will know that it can take a long time to actually get it. So to have somebody there willing to help me was amazing. The only problem was that she is actually in Newark, which is near Nottingham. Luckily, all of my family are actually from Lincoln, which is 40 minutes from Newark, so it's quite lucky that I can just go up and stay with them and go and see her. So that's what I did last week. So on the Friday, I drove up to Lincoln to stay with my grandparents because I had the CBT session on the Saturday. So I was really nervous for the CBT session because it had been a while since I'd had one. I'd seen her a couple of times before, but we hadn't really got into much. And so this session was going to be quite invasive. We were going to talk about pretty much everything, so I was really nervous, but I got there and she was really nice. We sat down and we had a coffee and we basically just started talking about everything that had gone on. And if you've watched my health anxiety video, you will know what happened. Just as a recap, it was Christmas Eve and my health anxiety flared up. So in the CBT session, we started from there. And I actually had to fill out a sheet to measure up my anxiety. So it was like a sheet of an anxiety scale from least severe to total panic attack, and she took it back to Christmas Eve when I was first sort of flaring up, and I had to fill out a form from then. So I filled it out and I filled it out so quickly because that one night is when I can really remember being in a total panic. And I filled it out really quickly, and most of them were either heavily panicked or severely panicked, and she said to me, that's the fastest I've ever seen anybody fill out the form. So yeah, we started from that and we talked a little bit about the health anxiety. We talked about my hot thought, which is basically my worst fear, my worst health anxiety fear, which, as I've mentioned previously, is a really hard thing for me to talk about because it always feels like if I say something out loud, it might come true, and that was something that was in my head for a long time during the flare-up. I keep calling it a flare-up because I'm not really sure what else to call it. But yeah, I managed to say it out loud to her, which to me showed that I was progressing, because if I'm able to say that hot thought out loud, it means that I'm getting somewhere. So yeah, we talked about that, and we talked a little bit about how I deal with the health anxiety. So for me, it's checking my body over for symptoms throughout the day, constantly just checking. And then if I notice anything different or I feel a little bit ill, I will Google my symptoms to check whether everything is okay, whether there's something wrong with me, whether I'm getting sick. As well as the checking OCD, I have contamination OCD, where I will wash my hands up to 60 times a day. I do this out of fear of getting poorly. I worry about putting my hands near my mouth if they're not washed, even if I'm doing this like without realizing it. So I will wash my hands up to 60 times a day. I talked to the therapist about this. I also talked to her about my checking OCD, which is for me the biggest part, and the intrusive thoughts that come with it. But basically there is so much to my OCD and so much to my health anxiety that it was really hard to just work on one thing with the hour and a half that we had. So we decided to work on a few things in that session, which, as I've mentioned, is the health anxiety, and we started talking about the contamination OCD. I told her a little bit about my symptoms, about my rituals, about the thoughts, and she decided to do a behavioural experiment, which honestly I am really surprised that I managed to do. Basically, she knows that if I am to eat something, I will have to wash my hands up to 16 times to make sure they are completely clean. In case I'm touching cutlery or putting my hands near my mouth, or touching anyone else's cutlery and then they put their hands near their mouth. So I will leave them to air dry. I won't touch a thing. I won't even dry them because I worry about washing them on a towel and maybe the towel has germs on it. So I just leave it to air dry. So I told her this, and she said to me, right, we're going to do an experiment. We're going to eat some cake. And I'm like, okay, I'll eat some cake happily. But she's like, we're all going to do it together. So she puts a piece of cake down in front of me, a piece of cake down in front of her, and she actually called her husband in, who is also a mental health professor, to do it with us. And she goes to me, we are all going to wipe our hands with a tea towel. And first I was like, well, I just don't do that. I'd prefer to have them air dry. And then things got worse because she said, I'm going to wipe this tea towel on the floor first. Like, can you imagine somebody with contamination OCD having to do that? So yeah, but she did it, and she wiped this tea towel on the floor. She then wiped her hands with it. She then gave it to her husband, who wiped his hands with it. And this was a bit of a comfort to me, because I thought, okay, well, if they're doing it, that means that they really don't think that they're going to get sick from doing it. So I just thought to myself, I need to do this. This is what I'm here for. I'm here to get better. I'm here to learn how to cope with it. So I did it. And I wiped my hands with this tea towel. And I then tried to cheat. So we had to eat the cake with our hands. And what I was doing was I was holding the cake with the edge of my fingers, like right at the edge, and I was eating every part of the cake that my hands hadn't touched. And she caught on like immediately, and she's like, you know, you have to eat that whole cake, every part of the cake. And I tried to avoid it, and I tried to be like, I'm not really hungry, I don't really want to finish the rest of this cake, I'm feeling a bit sick now. And she's like, no, you're doing it. So I did it. And then she made me wipe my hands around the plate and lick the cake off my fingers, which she and her husband did as well. All I can say is that while doing this, my anxiety was off the scale. Like, I had so much anxiety doing this. And she told me to focus on that. She's like, focus on the anxiety it's given you. And then we're going to wait 10 minutes and we're going to see what happens. So I'd started at, say, a 90 to 100, which was like the top anxiety for me. and after 5 minutes it had gone down to about 60, and after 10 minutes it had gone down to about 30, and after 20 minutes my anxiety had gone. So the experiment worked basically, which was great. And she later showed me a graph of how OCD and anxiety works, and I thought this was a really clever way to show me, you know, how it all comes together. So she drew out a graph, and then she wrote anxiety along the bottom, and she did a scale at the top, and she basically drew a really big line, and she's like, this is how high your anxiety goes, and so to get rid of this anxiety you do a compulsion or a ritual and your anxiety goes back down. But then it goes back up again, and then the same thing happens, because she said the problem with OCD is that you do these things to relieve anxiety, but they're temporary relief and they come back. So what she's trying to do is make me resist my urges to check things, to wash things, because she said that all that will happen is my anxiety will go right up at first, but then the more I resist, the more it will go down and actually stay down, as opposed to being up and down. So to go on with what happened next, she has set me 2 tasks for the week, which was for contamination. She said you are not allowed to wash your hands before you eat. So I have not been allowed to wash my hands before eating, which I've got to admit has been hard, and at times I have forgotten and I have washed my hands, so I am guilty of that. But I'm doing a bit better than I was, because there have been some days where I haven't washed my hands, and I've realised that even though it's given me massive anxiety at the time, afterwards the anxiety has decreased. She also said that I am not allowed to check my body over for symptoms, and I am not allowed to use Google. And for the first 4 days I managed this, but by yesterday, which was Friday, I slipped, and I don't know why, but my anxiety was like off the scale, and I was checking my body and I was Googling my symptoms, and I realised that the more I was doing this, the more anxious I was getting. So I pretty much ruined it for myself. But she's given me like a table, and I have to fill out every time of the day of every day of where my anxiety's at. So it's really cool to see that for the first 4 days it was pretty much between 0 and 50, but for the Friday it was like between 60 and 100. So that's where I'm at now. I have a phone call with my therapist tonight, because as I said, she lives in Newark, so it's really hard for me to go up and see her all the time. So I'm going to call her tonight and let her know how I've got on, and hopefully she'll be proud of me. But I actually really want to add, just before we wrap things up, is that one of the things that she has actually said to me this week is that while I am not checking, and while I'm not Googling, and while I'm not washing my hands, she is going to take responsibility for me, which means that she is responsible for if I get sick, if I don't do these rituals, which made me feel more at ease to do them, because I know that it's her responsibility. Because I've realised that a lot of my compulsions and my obsessions and my anxiety is actually about responsibility, and being responsible for making myself sick and being responsible for making others sick. And what she said is the more that we go on, the more she's going to give me parts of the responsibility. So that's just another technique that she's using on me. So yeah, I'm really sorry that this video was a bit jumbled. As I said, I tried to do another video and it didn't work out, so I've sort of done this one and I've tried to put it together, and I'm not sure that I've mentioned everything that is necessary, but I mean, you can watch my other videos on OCD and health anxiety to give you more of an idea as to why I'm going through CBT. So yeah, I'm not sure how long I will be under CBT for, but she has said that she wants to get me better or on the right track by this year, so we'll just see how it goes. I would really recommend CBT to anybody who has OCD or has health anxiety. I'm honestly not 100% sure how easy it is to get, because as I said, I was very lucky with mine. But as far as I know, it is a case of seeing your GP, talking about your symptoms, and requesting it, seeing how it goes. I recently wrote a Twitter thread on how to go to the GP and how to be taken seriously, so maybe you could give that a read to give you some tips on how to go to the GP feeling confident that you're going to get answers. Also, do feel free to message me to talk about my CBT, and I will be happy to help anybody maybe get on the right track as much as I can. So yeah. I have also been doing a giveaway on Twitter to a new subscriber to give them a self-care box to look after their mental health. The winner of the giveaway is Happy Mentality, at Happy Mentality. Your username is +re. So yeah, you've won the self-care box. I will be in touch with you and I will be sending out that box this week. So I hope you have a lovely time looking after your mental health and having a little bit of one-on-one time, some TLC, and just focusing on yourself and your mental health. So yeah, that's it today. Thank you so much for watching. If you did like this video, remember to give it a thumbs up and please subscribe to my channel if you want to keep watching mental health videos. I post every Sunday at 3 p.m. I'm not 100% sure what I'll be talking about next Sunday, but hopefully I will get to do the video that I struggled to do this week. So yeah, I will see you next time.